This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. Not much setup is needed when you hear this title. Your life depends on it, what you can do to make better choices about your health. Yes, I'm sure some of us already know, and we don't take action. We're lazy, we're stupid, we're arrogant, we're whatever. We just don't do the right thing. My guest today, Talya Miron-Shatz, is here to remind us of some of those right things. Because look, it all comes down to decision making. Once again, if you got a bad decision-making process about your money, your love life, or your health, you're toast. And so it makes a lot of sense to listen to the wisdom of those who have spent their lives figuring out ways to make sound, put the odds on our side decisions. Like I said, no big setup is needed here. Let's jump right in with Talya and get a little bit of that wisdom. Because as we have seen in the last few years, our life really does depend on it. There's no one coming to the rescue. It's up to us. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Talya Miron-Shatz. In advance of this call, I started thinking, what is really the core issue in the middle of this pandemic for me? And I think this extends to a lot of people. And the word that keeps coming to mind for me is trust. And I think we would all have to admit that we are officially at a trust breakdown. And I would think that if someone hears me say that, they think the opposite, then they're not talking to enough people. They're talking to their team. Because there is a trust breakdown. I would hazard a guess it's at least 50% of the world, probably a majority, when it comes to the pandemic, when it comes to trusting politicians, to trusting pharmaceutical, trusting their doctors, trusting the information. Trust is really tough right now, isn't it?
It sure is, but I think we need to parse it. There are various types of mistrust here. One of them is, mistrust of pharmaceuticals. And that's kind of funny. I do a lot of work with pharmaceutical companies. I consult them on how to convey information to patients, to doctors. And they're very hated. They're a hated industry. When I work with them, they're not bad people at all, but their image is like, oh, they're greedy. That's too easy. I think we need to walk away from the answers that are too easy. It's like, pharma just wants money.
Can I stop you there?
Yeah.
I don't know the exact number, but I think it's over 5, at least, billionaires have been minted since this pandemic started in the pharma industry. That is a lot of money. I mean, if I look at the Moderna stock price, I hear you say that, but I'm going to give you the retort right back, and I'm sure listeners will too. Like, hold on, Big Pharma, they're becoming billionaires right now.
Does that mean they're liars? Does that mean there's no good science behind what they're selling? If someone who owns a ton of Pfizer stock just became a gazillionaire, does that mean I should refuse the vaccine? Who am I hurting? Does that mean they're not trustworthy? I think that's another issue. It's like they made a ton of money. Okay, COVID is really putting front and center every possible value issue we ever had and never talked about. Is it okay to make money? All of a sudden, we're saying, wait, they became billionaires. And you can ask, that's kind of okay. Do you have to pay to get vaccinated? In the US, you don't. It's not like vaccines are only for the rich, although they reach rich countries first, for sure. You talk about trust. I think there needs to be transparency in the experiments and the results. And there's something else. I said we need to walk away from the easy answers. We really love easy answers. We love certainty, and there's none to be had here. We thought there would be. The beginning, the first lockdown, you'll just stay at home and everything will go away. Guess what? Didn't happen. Vaccinate, COVID will go away. Also didn't happen.
vaccinate the second, third, fourth, vaccinate for life. We start to talk about trust and big pharma. Look, we could probably talk for the entire hour or longer. Maybe we won't get that settled, but I don't think you're going to change the minds of some people when it is laid out as simply as it was by the leaders, so to speak. You're in a situation right now with Israel's getting a lot of publicity right now. You guys are on to the third vax. I want to raise my hand and say, well, hold on. Is all of Israel up from 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 into affinity?
I'm in Israel right now. I had my third vaccine. I have to tell you, it didn't solve all the problems, but I think it does mitigate them. So today I mentioned I was interviewed on TV and the interviewer said, and he was very excited, 400 people have died this month of COVID. I'm like thinking, were they vaccinated? They could probably defend themselves. They could protect themselves from this disease. You need to vaccinate and you really need to protect yourself. So it's kind of putting aside what you think of pharma. You can petition outside of pharma's offices. You can say, and rightly so, that someone is, I don't know, in our capitalist society, has to monitor, has to make sure that these profits aren't made at the expense of others. But yeah, if we all vaccinated, we would be able to sort of get back to life. And I say sort of, not like as a girly hesitation, but because it's a new sort of life. It's a new kind of life.
If we bring it back to the trust part, the problem with pharma too, and one of the reasons why there's a lack of trust is because there's an alliance between big pharma right now and government. The average person is not privy to that understanding. The average person hears, well, this was an emergency use. Instead of being very open with the population, there is a lot of, you sit down, kids, and you don't ask a question. Back to my original point, the trust issue, it's coming on all fronts. And you can tell in my voice. I'll throw another one out there on the table right now. I mean, the idea of masks. Look, I've been in Asia the entire time. Anyone who's traveled Asia knows that during the flu season, many people in Asia, you'll see this in Tokyo, wherever, they'll wear a mask if they're sick. I've never questioned this, and I've participated. But now here we are in a situation with the mask situation, and I want your perspective, but I'm just going to give some observations. Last year, the number one doctor in America, he went to a Washington Nationals baseball game, Dr. Fauci, he went out to the mound, he threw out a first pitch, he was wearing the mask. Later on in the game, he takes the mask off, he's sitting in the stands, eating popcorn, no mask next to people. That imagery causes smart people to go, I don't buy it. This is a show. This is a show. Take it a step further. I just watched a dinner party the other day with the Speaker of the House. Nobody's wearing a mask. Then you have a situation where masks are being mandated. I don't know if masks work or don't work. There's a lot of debate. I'm not even here trying to do that. It's the inconsistency and the hypocrisy that gets back to my number one issue, which is trust.
Yeah, I totally hear you. Again, I think just as a private person who cares about their own health and their family's health, we need to look at the data. And the data that I've seen shows that masks protect you and they protect others from whichever viruses or any nasties you're carrying. That's one thing. You're so right. There is some hypocrisy. There is a sense of immunity. It's like, I'm important, so it won't happen to me. Or some people are going at it from a different direction, which is completely apolitical. They're saying, I'm a healthy person. I eat organic. It's not going to happen to me. I don't need this. There's all kinds of things and values that we bring to the table when we look at this flimsy little mask, which actually is a means of protecting ourselves. So are people hypocritical? Yes. Do politicians sometimes feel immune? Yes, for sure. Is it infuriating? Oh my God, of course.
Dr. Fauci is more than a politician. This causes people to be like, are people lying to me? What is the truth? That gets back to my opening salvo with the trust. You're a medical doctor. You're saying, Mike, you're telling me unilaterally, you're like, look, they're going to provide some protection. You're not telling me they're going to provide 100%, but you're telling me they're going to provide some protection. I can believe that. That's my own personal view already also. I'm not saying it's 100%, but I've always had this belief, even if you get a little bit of protection, it's better than zero. But the hypocrisy just causes me in the middle of a pandemic to just feel like, who's going to stand up and say, you just did. You said, well, yes, you agree with me. There's hypocrisy. But we're not getting enough of the medical community to stand up and fight, in my opinion.
First of all, I'm not a medical doctor. My PhD is in psychology. I've been studying medical decision-making for a long time, but if you sprain your ankle, I'm not your person. Yes, I have seen data that masks help and protect a lot. I love that you said 100%. Wouldn't we want things to protect us 100%? That would be perfect. COVID just throws this 100% out the window. It tells us, yeah, you can be 100% COVID free or COVID foolproof, but you can be somewhat protected. That's a tough sell for politicians. That's really tough. It takes a lot of, dare I say, balls on your podcast. So it takes balls to say, I don't have all the answers. I can't provide 100% protection, but I can provide pretty good protection, and here's how.
What's frightening also, too, is not only is there the hypocrisy, it's the inconsistency and the not explaining. So, for example, I can look at the data, you can look at the data, we can all look at the data. We know where the deaths from this disease are coming from. They're not coming from 5-year-olds. During this whole time, because I've not put myself to be in a situation in an office environment or somewhere where I have to be around other people in a public setting in a closed space for all day. I've not been in that situation, so I've not put a mask on for 8+ hours. I sit here and I probably can feel my blood pressure going up. Around the world, we're mandating 5 and 6-year-olds to wear a mask for 8 hours a day at school. The title of your book, Your Life Depends on It. It's one of the most infuriating times right now. It's terrible.
I read a tweet that really got on my nerves. It was a French tweet. And this French lady said that she was asked for a vaccine approval, like to show that she was vaccinated as she entered a restaurant. And she said, it's a dystopian nightmare. I thought, wait a minute. For me, a dystopian nightmare is if you have to pay someone $100,000 to get vaccinated or do worse things to get vaccinated, or if there are hundreds of thousands of people lying dead on the streets. That's a nightmare. We're not there yet. Thank God, really. To just sum it up, it sucks. It really sucks. There's no easy way out of it. You need to figure out what sucks less, what is less difficult, what is less punitive. Is it telling kids, you can't go to school, you can't play with your friends, you just have to stay home and be frustrated and bored?
Why are we doing that? If there's no rationale to masking the kids up for 8 hours a day, and if there is, the powers that be that are mandating this are not revealing what that rationale is, it's very difficult to accept.
We're very different as people. I don't know you very well, but it sounds like you're more of a mistrusting person.
Trust but verify.
Okay, no, that's good. That's a very healthy place to be. I'm a scientist. That's where we come from. Here's the rationale as I see it. I think the Delta variant is more dangerous for kids than previous variants. Hello, ethical issues. If some teachers aren't vaccinated, they could give COVID to the kids, who in turn could give it to their parents. We don't want that. Trying to cut the chain of contagion. I want to go back to a point you made before, and that is, why aren't people explaining? Sometimes they are explaining, but it's in medical terms. And we're like, what? I didn't understand that. What did they just say? That's a huge problem with medicine. Sometimes we don't trust, sometimes we just don't understand. And we leave the doctor's office when we're scratching our heads and hoping to God that we understood what they said. It's not malevolent. It's just the way they speak. They are not trained and they're not given the resources. And I'm talking about doctors now, to speak to us in a way that we will understand and use. And it's almost ridiculous. There are fantastic startups. What they do is they translate the information for you. You would say, but wait a minute, I speak English, the doctor speaks English. Can we just speak the same language? And the answer is no. And sometimes we need more time to understand. And sometimes people just latch onto a word. The Pfizer vaccine is no longer experimental, a more permanent approval from the FDA. But when it was approved as experimental, people were saying, oh, it's an experiment. I'll grow a tail. I'll become an alien. They'll put a chip into me. People don't understand the meaning of experiment, and nobody explains. Whose fault is this? It's certainly nobody's taking the responsibility to say, here is a little infomercial about what it means that it's experimental and why you will not grow a tail.
This cuts both ways in terms of the terminology. I caught the mayor of Tampa this morning on a sound clip, and she was explaining why she had mandated vax for government workers. She was theoretically speaking to the unvaccinated person and saying, look, if you come into the office and you're not vaccinated and one of your coworkers has multiple comorbidities, you could infect them and they could die. I think what's interesting about that, I don't think you could even guess where I was going to go with this one yet, but I think what's interesting about that is the comorbidities part, because this is the central issue to COVID. Because what that mayor is saying is essentially, we know the people that are dying, the vast majority have an obesity issue. Vast majority. When you say somebody has comorbidities, to me, somebody who spends a lot of time working out, we are really pitting right now in society, we're pitting potentially the healthy against the unhealthy. The unhealthy are essentially running the show right now, because what that mayor of Tampa was saying was, hey, you over here who doesn't have the vaccination, you need to take the vaccination because your coworker is unhealthy. Unhealthy is not necessarily just by random chance. It's through a lifestyle. It's a way of living. Yes, there's going to be some people that are born with weakened immune systems and all kinds of things. But by and large, aren't we not dealing with a situation where a lot of the people that are getting the worst outcomes have taken very bad life choices over the course of their lifetime? Is that not a fair assessment?
It's a very fair assessment. Again, it's unspoken. It's really unspoken. It's also unspoken. Yes.
Yes, I know it is. It's infuriating.
That's why we're talking about it now. I was like, got to bang on the table. So we are talking about it, and it's there all the time. I mean, before COVID, I still had a job. So I would work with, I'm a researcher, but I also do a lot of work with health advertisers and with companies that try to create employee wellness programs. What these do is they try to help people, and you're going to really hate this, I think, make better health choices. What you might say is, well, it's their body. Why can't they do it on their own? There are two truths here. One is that it's difficult. The other is that, and that's, I think you are going to like, we live in a postmodern society. We live in a society where it's not cool to say, you're making bad life choices. The way that you're living and you haven't worked out since you were in preschool and you're smoking and whatever, this is hurting your health. And it's also hurting me because we are with the same health insurer. They're going to spend a lot of money on you. That's the kind of interdependence that we have. And I don't think we've ever seen it literally in front of our eyes as we are with COVID. And it's unspoken. But with vaccinations, it's a way of telling people, and I see it almost as the flip side of the way you perceive it. I mean, I totally see where you're going, but I also see this as a way of telling people you have got to take on the responsibility. The government can't fix it for you. It's on you to fix this.
I've got a little printout here in front of me that I looked it up before we started talking, and it says, this is from the Milken Institute.org. I believe it's a factual statement. I don't think it's something that's controversial. It says the total cost of chronic diseases due to American obesity and overweight was $1.72 trillion, equivalent to 9.3% of the U.S. gross domestic product. That was September 22nd, 2020. 10% of the American economy is related to obesity and obesity conditions. I mean, you and I are fairly bright people, I like to think. Somebody's making a lot of money off obesity. Not only all those folks eating the 7-Eleven foods all day long, but then the medical side of it, the treatment. What incentives do we have? I mean, look, you're being very rational about it. You're saying, like, your life depends on it. Let's look at this holistically. 10% of the American economy is devoted to treating obesity. Well, those folks don't want to stop treating obesity. It's a great way to make money.
Maybe three stakeholders here, probably more. The first one is people who are obese. If you go up the stairs, you're good. If you're panting once you've hit the second stair, you're not good. Obesity hurts your life. It hurts your lifestyle, definitely hurts your health, and puts you at risk for comorbidities, for other things. Even if you say, I'm healthy and obese, guess what? You're not going to stay healthy and obese for long. I mean, sorry, guys, if you are listening to this and you're not in the healthy BMI group, it's kind of a wake-up call, and that's the reality. And people should be taking care of themselves, and someone should be telling them that. I think doctors are telling them that. I think doctors are not particularly enjoying this. And the number you cited is frightening. And guess what? It's going to be even more frightening. In 5 years, 10 years, it's only going to go bigger. If only the joke wasn't on us. It's a very sad situation. Then you have employers, then you have insurers, and they don't have an interest to put a lot of money into treating these people. The opposite, they would want the problem to disappear. They would want people with obesity to weigh less, to work out more, to have healthier values of blood pressure and cholesterol and everything, to require fewer surgeries due to diabetes. It's bad. It's not fun. All of these forces, they should align. They don't always align. And we're talking about behavior change. It's going to sound really funny. I took a call from a startup, from a young, she's younger than me. She's not all that young, entrepreneur. And she wants to revolutionize the world of physical therapy. She said she had really interesting ways of doing that. And she said, and I want to do behavior change. I said, I strongly advise you against that. She was like, what? But you're a behavior change specialist. You're a social psychologist. That's what your PhD, and you're a full professor. How can you say that? I said, it's tough. It's really, really difficult. If you provide people with a challenge of recovering from surgery or not needing surgery, replacing that physical therapy, that's one thing. They see the immediate benefit. If they're obese, they work out, it's super hard for them. They get on the scale and they weigh exactly the same thing. And even if they worked out for a month, they still have to buy super large clothes and they still find life and movement difficult. That's just incredibly hard. It's the biggest challenge, I think. It's like COVID is a joke compared with behavior change in health.
Given your psychology background and you hear me come out of the gate, you properly discern that I'm a skeptic. Look, I want you to be honest with me. Have you heard me say anything that's unreasonable, irrational? I mean, I'm just a keen observer of what's going on. And I think the most important thing you've said so far in this conversation to me is the word unspoken. And I think that's what's so much right now is there's so much that's unspoken. I want to go into that in a moment, but I assume a lot of the problems that we are dealing with right now in the middle of a pandemic is based on hurting people's feelings.
That's what it boils down to, isn't it? That's fascinating. And it's not irrational. When I teach, and I used to teach at Wharton, and wherever I teach, I write on the board, irrational means not based on mathematical logic. That's it. If you're in a relationship and someone says, oh, your partner, here's a better partner. They're just like yours, but they can also play the piano. You're not going to ditch your partner. Mathematically, you're making a mistake. Emotionally, it's like, get out of here. I love my partner. I just needed that because you're getting very intense. You're an intense kind of guy. That's a good thing.
I don't scare you, do I?
Nah. It would take more than that to scare me. I completely hear you. I think you're very smart to be skeptic. You're smart to be questioning. But I think we also need to divide the things we're skeptical about and the things we can trust. And, you mentioned Israel. People here have been vaccinated very quickly. The protocols of getting the vaccines, the conversations, the discussions with Pfizer, they are only to be revealed in 30 years. Now, isn't that strange? Isn't that really weird? Doesn't that say something?
Repeat that again. I don't think I caught what you said.
The whole negotiation and discussion and decisions to bring the vaccinations to Israel, they are only to be opened to the public for disclosure in 30 years.
Okay, I'm back to the word trust. Okay.
I know. Of course.
Oh my God. There's only one reason to do that. There's only one reason to do that.
No, I think there's more than one reason.
To hide something.
Yeah, but what are we hiding? Are we hiding greed? Are we hiding some political discussions? What are we hiding? I don't know. What I do is I say, this sucks. This is politics and it's ugly. And I was protesting against it for a while. And things have changed, and that's good. I look at it and I say, do I trust the process by which this happened? Do I trust the politicians who brought us along? No, not really. But do I trust the science behind the vaccinations? Yes, because I read it and I follow it and I'm thinking this is good and this protects me and protects my family, protects my mother who's 90 years old. This I trust. But what sucks and may be suspicious, that's the political side. And we don't have to trust that. We certainly should not trust that blind.
The political side and the vaccination side are like attached at the hip right now because the political side has given the vaccination side the ability to get to market faster than they normally would because of the pandemic. I think for me being the skeptic, I have to assume, look, there's files still to this day. I told you I'm in Vietnam. There are files to this day still that are sealed from LBJ about Muhammad Ali. Can still not see criticism that Muhammad Ali was giving about Vietnam back in the 60s is still sealed by the United States government. Why is that? I mean, I'm sure it's because it embarrasses the blank out of somebody. And I'm sure that 30-year window would probably is there because if it wasn't there, you would not have such a high vaccination rate in Israel. That would be a fair supposition to draw. Like, why not? Why did they need this 30-year window? That's ridiculous.
I think because the politics behind it wasn't 100% kosher, to use a Jewish word that fits Israel. I think the politics wasn't kosher.
Did you start off this conversation with me as skeptical as I was, or did we both get to the same side in 30 minutes in?
I've always been a skeptic. I'm a huge skeptic of government policies in many ways, and I'm a huge skeptic when politicians promise you that they're going to eradicate COVID and everything's going to be amazing tomorrow. I'm a skeptic, just like you. But I look at it I think, what's the medical evidence? And that's always a huge issue. And, we were talking about emotions. People are saying, I'm being pushed to vaccinate. I hate it. Okay, but can you put your emotions aside for a minute and think, well, I actually love my family and I want to protect them and I'm going to vaccinate because this is the proof. And I can see, and we have actually a study came out at the New England Journal of Medicine today comparing over 800,000 people in Israel, because that's where the vaccination was first rolled out and there's national coverage. So it's very easy to roll out health plans. Over 800,000 people who were vaccinated and over 800,000 people who were not, and they were matched demographically. You can't say, well, these were vaccinated and fit and the others, no. It's like they're very, very similar. You see that in terms of side effects, there were some side effects to the vaccine, and that's to be expected. But the bright side for the vaccination was that people who were unvaccinated and had COVID had it much, much harder, and in a way that hurt them a lot more than any side effect hurt those who were vaccinated.
I doubt, though, with what you said, because I can see it happen. I'm keeping my finger on the pulse of things. And I would have to say that all the contradictions and hypocrisies and inconsistencies that I've been laying out on the political side, because it's hard to separate that from the pharma side, we're reaching a point right now where people that have not got the vax are locking down, so to speak. The next step is not going to have anything to do with medicine. It's going to be like, you're going to be mandated to get this. We really need to think about what that could unfurl, because I think the next word becomes violence. Australia is completely locked down right now. My understanding is Australia's vax rate is like 20 to 30%. So why is this rather small, like 20 million people, why is this small, rather homogenous place so distrustful of government, but at the same time, they're allowing government to lock them down? It's very interesting. I can see this across all these different places where, especially the island, Singapore, New Zealand, even Israel's kind of a unique case, almost like an island. It's really interesting to watch what's happening right now. But my finger on the pulse of things is the vibe is not good.
Well, the vibe has not been good since COVID invaded our lives, for sure. I mentioned dystopian nightmare. We're living a dystopian nightmare, actually. You could say that lockdown is a dystopian nightmare. And that's where we were. And vaccinations help us prevent that. I think we should look at the evidence regardless. Really, it doesn't matter who you voted for. It's almost stupid of me to say that. It's like, how naive is she? I'm not naive at all. But I'm saying for your own good, for your own health, it's easier, it's safer to look at the data than to look at whoever's delivering it and say, I don't like them, I don't trust them. And I don't know that we're going to violence at all. I know that we're trying to contain a pandemic. We're trying to avoid deaths. That's not a bad thing.
Last year in America, we had a president that 50% of the country liked and 50% of the country didn't. This year in America, we have a president that 50% of the country likes and 50% of the country doesn't like. Last fall, though, I thought that one of the political moves that was made that's not being discussed a lot is that before the prior president left office, those that were running for president and vice president said pretty much unequivocally, we don't trust any vax that's coming from this guy. That was pretty much spelled out to their people. One of the problems we're having in America right now is the African-American population is saying no to the vaccine. And it did not help that Kamala Harris came out last fall and said, I don't trust this vaccine under Trump. It's really messy with the politics. Before I was getting on to talk with you, I was thinking, well, gosh, how do we even get to the medical conversation in 2021 without the political conversation? They're so intertwined and it's so unfortunate. It wasn't like this when I was a kid.
They're so intertwined and it's so unfortunate.
Yes.
You said it. And guess what? I'm speaking about health inequities tonight. And it's really sad. It's really unfortunate with the African-American community that they are mistrusting, and COVID is hurting them by mistrusting the guy or the girl, the lady, whoever says that they don't trust vaccines. And why anyone would say that, I'm not sure that was the smartest or best thing to do. You can mistrust a political figure.
That was to win an election. But you know what? I also have to put myself in the shoes of African-American men who all know about the Tuskegee experiments. There is some rationale for that lack of trust.
There is. But if you're in America right now, you seem, I don't want to assume, but you seem fairly white to me.
My tan is going down. I need more of a tan, I'm 50% Lithuanian, and the other 50% is my mom, and she's Irish and French and British, basically half Russian.
So basically, regardless of how much tan you have on, you're not an African American. But if you were in America, you would be vaccinated. You would be given the vaccine. It's not experimental. It's not there to see, oh, interesting, we have an inmate here. Let's just give him this stuff and see if he develops TB. And if he does, we don't really care. That's awful. It's just awful. The medical community no longer operates like that at all. Since the Tuskegee experiments, since things that were done in Russia in the beginning of the 20th century, since the Holocaust, where prisoners were used as inadvertent participants in horrible, can't even call it medical experimentation, there are many stops on medical research. This just doesn't happen anymore at all. We respect the lives and the health of participants, and there are many stops that are pulled at every hospital and every academic institution to prevent that. We have to send out a very complicated and compassionate message to the African American community, and that is to say, we understand there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of mistrust, but please, for your own sake, not for the sake of whoever is in power and whatever color they are, for your sake, for your family, please look at the data, look at the numbers. Data is such a cold word. Just look at the numbers of how many people died who are unvaccinated and how many people die of COVID who are vaccinated. There's a staggering difference. It really helps.
It also helps, though, too, to always keep going back to who is dying from COVID. That's also causing an issue. For example, the quarterback of the New England Patriots is probably going to lose his job because he did not get the vax, and now he's losing playing time because he violated some kind of protocol. Why would he do that? Well, he's probably thinking, I'm 32 years old. I'm one of the best athletes in the world. I can look at the data, and the data says almost nobody my age and my condition is dying. He can look at the data and see that. I think the argument that might come from you would be like, well, hold on. What about your mom and your grandmom and your dad and those things? But people are being rational for their personal self-interest, I think. Some people that are choosing not to be vaxxed.
Two things here. One is some things on a national level are determined not just by the number of deaths, but by the number of people who have COVID. And to have COVID is a continuum. I had COVID. I was insanely tired, but thank God, I recovered. I'm fine. I can do everything. I can taste and I can smell, but that wasn't fun. But if you only counted COVID in a binary manner. That is, are you sick? Aren't you sick? You would say, yeah, Talya Miron-Shatz, check, she's sick. Is that a national scare? I don't think so. So we need to watch out the way we're counting. But, and I'm going to throw your own argument right back at you, Mr. Personal Responsibility, because you were talking about obese people. And you're saying if they're obese, it's their responsibility. Like, seriously, guys, lay off the potato chips, get off the couch, do something about it, lose some weight, get fit. Might not take you a day, might take you a couple of years. You'll be healthier and you will cost American economy a lot less. They can say, I don't care about American economy. I care about potato chips. You do want people sometimes to do what is good for them and also good for society.
But also, if we look at the COVID situation, and my understanding on some of the science is, not only are those that have obesity prone to the worst outcome, they are also biologically super spreaders. They are producing more virus. There's another unspoken thing that I don't think anyone wants to talk about. Because what this is doing is this is forcing people to compare people to other people, which has always been problematic in human history. But here we are in a situation with this crazy, odd experiment thrown at us. Perhaps we're all in a simulation, and this is to find out how we deal with it, right? But here we are in a situation where, look at my country, America, like 50% of the country is obese by a medical definition. They don't want to die. I understand that. I've got friends, family that are obese. Okay, no one wants to die. I'm not wishing that on anybody. But this is pitting people against each other.
Not blatantly. Not blatantly. I think it's pitting people against each other with regard...
Because it's unspoken? Because we're not talking about it? Is that why it's not?
Also, that's one reason. That's one reason. But I think if you're obese and you're not, if you're obese, I couldn't say, Michael, you're obese. You're putting yourself at risk. You're a super spreader. Lose weight now. You're not going to be able to do that. But if you're unvaccinated, I can say, Michael, go get vaccinated. Here's the clinic. Don't come home until you're vaccinated.
That's what the governments are doing. They're putting the burden on the people that are the least at risk to protect the people that are most at risk. And that is an interesting scenario that we've been thrown into. And that is, you're really forcing somebody that might, like, for example, the quarterback of the New England Patriots, maybe he has his reasons. Maybe he's got some medical condition that I don't even know about, and he just does not want that vax. Why should he be burdened with taking the vax if he wants to take his life in his own hands? Because right now, you mentioned it earlier, we're probably all going to get Delta. It's going to spread everywhere. The vaccines are basically helping people with the worst case outcome. If that guy doesn't want to take the vax, it probably, statistically, probability-wise, he'll probably turn out all right.
He might.
Looking at the numbers, he'll probably be okay. So far, maybe a new variant will knock us all out in about 2 weeks, right? In 2 weeks, maybe the new variant will take everybody out regardless of obesity or not. We don't know.
We don't, but we can talk about personal responsibility. I think you're more comfortable talking about personal responsibility when it comes to behavior change, to smoking, to, you haven't mentioned smoking, but...
I don't smoke.
Yeah, no, I figured, but I'm just saying it's another risk factor that people put themselves at.
Let me take you to something, because I don't want to keep you. You've done some great work here, and we would be amiss at this point in time to not have the conversation we're having right now. I always tell folks, you come on and we have a nice conversation. If people like you, they check your book out. That's kind of how it works. So I think people will appreciate that. They're going to understand that your book is going into a lot more areas. And I'm kind of staying focused in this one area because it's life-changing. It's world-changing, changing history. Let me bring up a side issue to something, because I think this will fit in with your background. It kind of stays at, still bringing up the obesity issue a little bit, but bringing in a little bit of psychology. I have noticed, and I'm seeing this being shared with a lot of people, I don't see what I'm going to describe with you with men as much, but I am seeing it with women. And I want your analysis. I want you to tell me what's going on. But I'm seeing a lot of women who are in this high risk group that we're talking about. Maybe these ladies are over 150 kg, and they are making TikTok videos and Instagram videos in bikinis. They are flaunting it all, saying body positivity and everything is fine and I'm healthy. I've read the statistic about the healthcare dollars that go towards obesity. What is going on psychologically amongst women, especially where they are taking on this extra weight and then just saying, it's okay? Look, when I was a kid, I could pick up Sports Illustrated and they had Paulina Poroskova on the front cover, and she was unreachable, archetype, beautiful, thin model. Now my nephews get to see Sports Illustrated. It's basically the women that I'm talking to you right now about. What is going on psychologically here? Because they've got to know deep down that this is not a healthy situation, but they are telling the world they are healthy, and it's really unusual to me. This is, again, another one of those unspoken topics.
I think there's a good thing here and there's a bad thing here. You said unreachable. It was unreachable for you because you couldn't say, oh my God, I'm just going to give this beautiful model a call and I'm going to date her. It was like, she's a goddess. And maybe you also like thin women. That's fine. I think body positivity has really great sides to it. I think women have been shamed for their bodies and embarrassed with their bodies, and it's ridiculous. I swim a lot and I see the young women in the swim team. They never disrobe in the dressing room. They're so body conscious. And I want to tell them, you've got to be kidding me, girls. Like, just own it. The good thing is that women are liking their bodies. The bad thing, and that's very myopic is like short-term vision, is that people are not thinking about the health consequences. And it sounds so boring, health consequences, blah, 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 I don't want to think about it. I don't want to go there, but that's the truth. The truth of the matter is if you weigh over 300 pounds, you're not going to be healthy for long. You're going to have fertility issues. That's one of the causes. It's linked with infertility. If you're obese, that's not fun. You don't want to have babies. Do you want to have diabetes? Do you want to have high blood pressure? Do you want to be on medication from the time you're like 35? You don't want that. But I think people are myopic always. I mean, I did a project years ago with Johnson & Johnson, and we presented at the UN Special Assembly on Non-Communicable Diseases. That's basically chronic conditions. And what we did is we tried to prevent this myopic vision. You look in the mirror, you say, man, I'm hot. I look smoking, and maybe you are smoking. It's going to catch up with you, because if you are smoking and if you consume too much alcohol and if you do not exercise, it's going to catch up. By the time it catches up, you're going to say, oh my God, I was such an idiot. I wish I could fix that. So we tried to place the reality, the harsh reality in front of you, even though when you look in the mirror, all you see is this great looking hunk. And that's tough. That's really, really tough.
One of the things that you have laid out in your desire for your work, quoting here, you're looking to create a shared communication expectations between doctors, hospitals, and patients. I think one of the tough things, and I'm glad we're having this conversation, is because these conversations, do you think I've been filtered at all today? I mean, I'm not filtering anything. But, if I can't turn on, I don't know any major program that I can turn on a TV show where it's all just filtered white noise. Nobody is getting to the heart of the issue. Everyone is afraid to offend everyone. It used to not be like this. Doctor used to be able to say, well, if you don't lose weight, you might not make it to 50. I think the conversation that you and I are having is really important. I wish we could have more of them. Do you find yourself in this situation where I'm not trying to challenge you personally, but I'm saying, do you find these kinds of challenging conversations enough, or do you find more people just doing the boilerplate, happy-go-lucky stuff?
I find myself in a position, I think that's very typical of anyone who teaches, who works with corporates, where you can't offend people. But I really do make a point of not filtering myself in terms of my views. I think that's crucial, really, really crucial, because the anything goes, it's a lie.
Way that I've gone today, the tone that I've gone today, the topics that I brought up today, in some of the corporate circles, the governmental circles that you have been in, would the way that I have brought these subjects up have caused some people to literally get up and walk out of the room?
I don't think so, honestly, because I think if you're an employer, if you're an insurer, you know exactly how much you're paying, and you look terrified at how much you will be paying. And that's why I want to drive behavior change. We can put the judgment aside We can't ignore the facts. We must not ignore the facts. I want to tell you of how I discovered that actually when I was writing. I thought I was writing a book for patients on how they can make better medical decisions. I lifted my eyes from the patient and I thought, wait a minute. They are speaking with physicians. I have to give takeaways for physicians as well. They also need to be taught in how to discuss things with patients. And sometimes these are harsh realities, putting COVID aside. If you're talking to a cancer patient, if you want them to take on a treatment for a woman after she's had her breast removed for breast cancer, what are you telling her? How are you conveying the risks? How are you conveying the benefits? Are you going to tell her that only 3 women out of 100 will benefit from chemo in her situation? I had to talk to physicians as well. And then I thought, but wait a minute, you're being ridiculous. These doctors work within a system. The system has to understand that in order for good, better medical decisions to happen, people have to understand what we're talking about. And who that someone is anybody's guess. That has to be someone within any medical system, and right now within any political system, that tries to give people good guidance, let's say, not instructions, but just guidance. Someone has to mediate the information, has to explain it in ways that are both emotional, clear, transparent. That has to happen. I kept telling myself, I don't want to write an angry book. And the reason why I didn't want to write an angry book is I didn't want people to walk away from it. But I also didn't want to write a book that pretended like if you were smart and walked into the doctor's office, you could have all the answers. That's a big fat lie. I don't want to lie to people. And I don't want anyone walking out of a doctor's office unsure of what's going on or sitting in front of the TV screen. You have your doubts about vaccines, about masks. Why is that? I don't want people to say, well, maybe I just don't understand. Obviously, that's not something you would say because you're confident enough, but other people might feel that there's something wrong with them. No, there's something wrong with the way this information is conveyed to you.
Dr. Fauci at the baseball game, that was a tough one. I mean, that just watching the Speaker of the House the other day with no mask at a party, I mean, you just kind of say, well, I've seen people come up to the lectern wearing a mask, but they show the camera to the side before they walk up to the lectern. They don't have the mask on. They put the mask on. They walk up to the lectern. They take the mask off. There's so much theater going on. I've got 2 issues, though, 2 questions that I would love for you to address. Number one, so we're having these lockdowns around the world. Given your particular background, psychology, I have heard almost no conversation about the psychological ramifications to lockdowns. For example, the way the kids are being treated in schools and stuff. But maybe you could just go to your perspective. I think I'll be fine. I don't like it, but I'll get out there to be whatever. I can see with some close friends right now, I can feel their depression from lockdowns.
Absolutely. I very uneloquently summarized COVID as saying this sucks. And it sucks because there's a price to pay. There's a huge price to pay. What we see on the news, we see the number of people who have COVID, who die of COVID. And that's very clear. We don't see the numbers going up of domestic violence, and they do. We don't see the numbers that go up of depression, of alcohol abuse, and they do. They do among younger people. They do among
suicides from people that have lost their businesses.
Yes, exactly. Loneliness, despair. I think we entered the first lockdown and with like a sense of almost manic hope, like saying, yeah, we can do it. Everything's going to be better. Who's so elated about anything? Now, nobody. We're disillusioned. That's really a tough place to be. And we can draw our conclusions. And my conclusion might be different from yours. My conclusion is to say, COVID is here. It's a new chronic condition. We've got to learn to live with it. And we've got to learn to protect ourselves against it as best we can. That's my conclusion. Others reach other conclusions. But, going back to obesity, it's almost like I think you wish someone would say, you guys, you're obese, take care of yourselves or else.
Back in 1984, when I was in high school, I went back and I watched a Dr. Fauci speech recently that he gave on AIDS in 1984. But this reminds me a lot of AIDS because back in the early 80s, There was a certain narrative that perhaps there was going to be a massive heterosexual AIDS explosion. It never happened. AIDS has primarily stayed in high-risk groups. It will be interesting to see if COVID stays primarily, I'm not saying all, but primarily in high-risk groups. At the moment it could change.
I think we have to define COVID. What does it mean it stays? If you get sick, you'll be probably likely fine. If someone who is obese, older, with comorbidities, unvaccinated, they're going to be hurt.
The reason I made the parallel to AIDS is we know all these years later, there's still a few very high-risk groups for getting HIV.
Yeah.
At this moment, the high-risk group is obesity. But that could change. But at the moment, that is the situation, right?
That and being unvaccinated. And the combination is really bad.
I'm going to have to push you a little bit on there because look, obesity, what is it? It's like 4 out of 5 folks that are dying that are medically obese. To say that the unvaccinated 30-year-old woman who is 125 pounds, her risk is not the same as even this days with a vaccinated obese person.
Not.
I just want to be careful about that.
Sure. I'm saying you can't un-obese a person overnight. That's not going to happen.
We should have started last year, though. We should have got on the TV and told everybody, like right now, when they knew the data, like they should have scared everyone crazy. People could have lost a lot of weight by now.
Maybe. But the thing with weight loss is that it requires a lot of discipline. It requires a lot of new habits. And that's a tough one. I want to question your HIV parallel for a moment. It was hard to catch AIDS. It wasn't impossible, but it was hard to catch it if you lived a heterosexual lifestyle and did not get blood transfusions. There were very specific ways to get AIDS for the most part. With COVID, it's a little bit different. I was in Cambridge. I went to get coffee. I was in Paris. I was on the metro. You could catch it in various ways. It's a lot harder to protect yourself. And that's why we need a lot of people.
I was making the parallel to the worst case outcomes.
Yeah, I know. But even then, and I think even the not so worst case outcomes, you mentioned loneliness, you mentioned kids suffering. These are not great outcomes either. We want to prevent those for sure. We want people to live as happily and as freely as possible.
I have one big picture question that's beyond COVID. I would love for you to kind of add some perspective to. Will we get to a situation with healthcare, with insurance, where it will actually get to the point that you get rewarded for taking certain activities and then you get penalized for not? Because right now we don't have that. Like, for example, if we take the lady out there who's the fit yoga teacher and she doesn't drink, she doesn't smoke, and she loves to work out and she eats healthy and all that kind of stuff. When it comes to the insurance companies, she really doesn't get a benefit over her sister who perhaps just watches TV all day and eats Cheetos and is 150 kg. Will we ever get to the point where people are rewarded for taking their personal responsibility in healthcare? Because we're not there right now at all.
Your premiums are lower if you're healthy. And that's one of the reasons why your insurers, your employer.
How is that measured, though? Is that really measured very efficiently? I don't think that it's measured too efficiently. Are they really being checked every year and then that information is being fed in and then there's a noticeable difference in the premiums based on how they're living? Those that are saying, forget it, I just want to have a good time and eat everything and drink everything and smoke everything. And the other folks, it's the healthy yoga fitness lady. Is there really, truly a fair plus and minus system on those two individuals?
So there's going to be a very long answer.
Go ahead. It's yours.
Part of it is about the American healthcare system. The reason why your employer cares about your health is that they're paying for it now. Your insurer may care less about your health because you're very likely to switch. And when you're older, you're not going to be their problem. You're going to be on Medicare. They don't really look at Michael Covel and say, oh, we better get this guy to the age of 65 as fit as possible. They're like, yeah, somebody else's problem. I don't care. And that sucks. That's difficult. That's unpromising for healthcare. Another thing that happens is that your doctor is allotted 15 minutes with you. And if you come in and something hurts, then they're going to check that and they're going to have very little time to go over your lifestyle, to go over your measurements, to say, how's it going? Have you been working out? What's happening? It's not there. It's probably not in the billing code either. I shouldn't be saying that. I feel bad saying that. Like, what's a billing code? Who cares? Why should my doctor want a billing code in order to ask me, Talya, are you working out? Are you still doing yoga? Do you still swim? I haven't seen you at the pool in a while. What's happening? You gained a few, you lost a few. What's going on? It's not part of the conversation with the doctors. But I want to challenge you on something. You're very much an independent person, a free
Come
thinker.
on. No, that's not true. What makes you think that? Come on.
I know. You're such a benign sort of guy. No personality there.
No opinions.
Whatsoever. None. I think given that, I see a contradiction. You feel bad about forcing people to vaccinate because they can take care of themselves. You feel better about telling people, come on. You weigh 300 pounds. What is up with that? You should do this, this, and this, and that. All these activities, all this healthy lifestyle activities, which will benefit you. Really, they're for your own good and for society's good and for health insurance good. Everybody wins. It's a major win-win. If you feel better about saying that and sort of policing people, and I know you're not a policing kind of guy, but policing people into making these better health choices than you do about vaccinations. There's a fine line here. Where do we draw the line?
Essentially, the way I look at it right now is that we have a situation where we have an obesity problem across the globe. Those people don't want to pass on. A lot of them in democracies vote. Politicians know who votes. We're in a situation right now where it surely looks like a lot of this is, we can look at the data. We know the typical, I think it's 95% of the people that are passing on have over 4 comorbidities. Those young people, again, that are unvaxxed can say, well, hold on, I'm looking at the data. If I get sick with this thing, it sounds like I'm going to be in bed for a couple of weeks or something, and I'm going to take that risk because I'm not one of the people. I can look at the numbers. They can look at the numbers. They know, of course, they could be one of the lightning strikes and they could die anyways if they take that choice. But the numbers for the people without the comorbidities, the risk is very low. The risk is low.
Is lower. The risk is definitely lower.
Let's keep it at that word lower for a moment. It's dramatically. I mean, if I say 95% of those that are passing on, those that are dying, have 4+ comorbidities, some young person who's 25 or 20, I saw the mayor of New York say yesterday, he gleefully said on MSNBC, he said, let's start vaccinating the 5-year-olds. And I'm like, whoa, why are we vaccinating the 5-year-olds? It doesn't register for me. I mean, the only reason you vaccinate the 5-year-olds is to protect the obese teachers. Now, that's something that's unspoken, but that's the only thing that makes any sense. And I don't say that to be mean to the obese teachers, but it doesn't make any sense to, or you're saying, well, the parents might be obese as well. So I don't know. I want to pull my hair out, whatever hair I have left. I have a lot of hair right now because it hasn't been cut for a long time.
I hear you. I think it's true that the less healthy you are, the older you are, the more likely you are to suffer in a big way from COVID. But none of us is immune. We can get hurt. I think that's part of the modern ethos. And I'm part of that. I feel invincible. And I'm not. I'm really not. I think we do tend to feel maybe a bit more invincible than we actually are, maybe a bit more in control than we actually are. People are saying things, and it's not just in the US, it's in the UK as well. Things like, I'll monitor, I'll see what's happening, because sometimes people do get hurt and you can protect yourself. That's a really simple question, actually, of risk versus benefits. I'm not going to the 5-year-olds. I'm going to people our age, a bit younger, perhaps, definitely a bit older. What are the risks? What are the benefits? The benefit is a benefit for society, which you may not like, but it's there. And it's a benefit for me because I feel protected. I do. I travel a lot. I love that. And I feel much better now that I've been vaccinated. So that's for me. I'm not benefiting any politician or pharmaceutical company. I'm benefiting Talya Miron-Shatz, who got to travel the world and got to go to Venice.
I support your choice, but I also support that New England Patriots quarterback that doesn't want to take it, even though he's probably going to lose his job for that. The real reason you don't pick on me too much during this conversation is I can look at your work and I can say, well, if Danielle Kahneman is saying something nice about her work, she taught at Wharton. The middle name of Wharton is risk analysis, essentially. Mr. Tetlock's up there as well, too. You're not picking on me too much because you know that I'm ultimately, even though I might be a little bombastic, you know that I'm trying to root myself in some analysis of the data. So that's why you don't kill me too much. I know.
That and the fact that we're not in the same room.
Oh, you want to kill me if we were in the same room?
I know, I'm debating. It's a tough situation. You have to put policies in place. If you were the government, I'm pretty sure you never imagined yourself to be the government.
I ran as a politician at the age of 21, believe it or not, in the Washington, D.C. area.
Wow.
I was very stupid. I wasn't stupid, but I was crazy.
The benefit of the youth, that's always good. If you want to be stupid when you're 21. That's great. If you were the government, if you were whatever in power, and you would say, there's this pandemic, it's wreaking havoc in health, in society, suicide rates, violence, depression, people are drinking too much. It's really, really bad for my society. What can I do? How can I, the government, prevent that? And you would want to put policies in place. Even if the best quarterback of the New England Patriots didn't approve with the policies, you might still enforce them. By the way, kids are mandated to vaccinate against polio. Parents can't just say, or maybe some of them do, but not enough. Thankfully, not enough to bring polio back. Kids are mandated. Why? Because someone up there thinks that polio is a terrible disease, which we eradicated. Thank God. It's no longer there.
We're not going to eradicate COVID. It might go away, but we're not going to eradicate it.
We can eradicate it as a devastating situation, as a debilitating situation. That, I think, is the goal. And it's a tough sell. It really is. I mean, politicians don't like slogans that have more than 4 or 5 words in them. We're not going to eradicate COVID. We'll just make it a chronic condition you can live with. That's a terrible slogan. But that's the truth. That's the reality.
You know, I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, 15 miles outside D.C. I've known my fair share of politicians. I've seen my fair share of weird stuff on the Hill. I'll give another one of those unspoken views, and I'm sure it'll cause some people to be, or whatever, and maybe you too. And it would be a longer conversation to get into it. But I would argue on both sides of the aisle, the typical American politician, again, left or right, I don't care. The typical American politician has one goal and one goal only. And if the average American understood what that goal was, they would probably be able to handle them better. That one goal is to sit in that chair. That's their goal, to be elected. When it comes to our politicians looking out for me or our politicians trying to sit in that chair, it's a tricky conversation, huh?
It is. But given that, you can say that some politicians also care about their nation more than about other things or alongside other things. If all we have is mistrust, we're going to be in a very tough spot.
We're there. Back to Dr. Fauci throwing out the baseball pitch, wearing the mask, and then going to the stands, taking the mask off and eating popcorn. I need somebody to come on TV and explain that to me. I need Dr. Fauci to lower the ego and tell me why he did that. Why did he do that?
That?
Why did he do it? Do you know why he did it? Why did he do it?
I think, first of all, people are humans. So are politicians. Everyone has their blips. If you called him on it, he would say, I made a mistake.
He's also said at various points in time the masks work and the masks don't work. There's been so much flip-flopping around, and it's really tough. And I'm not trying to pick on him personally. Maybe he's a fine guy, but he is the highest paid federal employee in the United States of America. He is the guy that's been the point person on this pandemic. And he is like somebody that is not trustable at this moment in time because he's been all over the map. And he's obviously a very smart man. And I get it that it's probably fun and exciting to be on TV and all of a sudden he's popular and all that kind of stuff. But man, he should at least come out and do a press conference and say, you know, I heard this guy Mike on a podcast and I understand his point. It doesn't make any sense what I did. And here's why I did it. You're saying, okay, he's human. No one's even saying that. You're the first person I've heard say that.
Is it commendable? No. He needs to set an example. Cameras are on him. Eyes are on him. By the way, I don't envy his job, regardless of how much he's being paid. That's tremendous pressure, tremendous responsibility. I also think things are shifting so quickly. I disagree with you, by the way, about the masks. I think I told you that I did see data that masks stop the spreading. So they protect you.
Quote, I was quoting Dr. Fauci. He's gone back and forth.
I don't know. What you need to do, what I need to do, what everyone needs to do is to put our emotions aside for a moment and focus on our true commitment. And that is to ourselves, to our bodies, to our health, to our family. And think of what is the best thing that protects me. I want to see the data. By the way, I want to throw another psychological concept at you, and that's the confirmation bias. So that's our tendency to just keep on believing what we've been believing and to seek out evidence that will support that and to just dismiss any evidence that does not support that. And I think there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of echo chambers that we are in that we don't want to listen to the other person. That's tough.
No doubt about it. Look, I'll tell you my situation. I was presented with the opportunity to get the Astra vaccination 3 or 4 weeks ago. I went to take it. And the reason I went to take it was because I thought, well, I'm in Asia. I want to travel back to the States and see family and friends. This is probably going to get mandated. So I'm going to have to bite the bullet. I don't necessarily want to do it. I work out like a crazy person, but I'll do this. So I went and I got in line to get my AstraZeneca vaccine. And at the last minute, they walked out and they said, sorry, no Astras left today, just Sinopharm. And everybody left because nobody wanted to trust the Sinopharm vaccination. I'm still unvaxxed.
I hope you do get vaxxed. You made 2 really good points. One is the power of mandates, and they work. You mistrust and you're a skeptic, and that's fine. But at some point you said, I weigh the pros and cons. I think it's a good vaccine. I think it won't hurt me. I think it will protect me. And I kind of have to because there's a benefit. There's a huge benefit. I miss my friends and family in the US. I want to be able to travel.
My point of view is changing since that was declined, though. There is so much negative vax information out there. And I didn't have the confirmation bias. I was ready to do it. But the amount of negative vax information right now, and this is where I said people are like locking down. I think you're going to have a situation where a significant part of the global population is going to say, I guess if I'm going to lose my job or I can't fly, I'm going to get it. But I think some people might even say no matter what. A large part of the population might say no matter what and might be willing to fight over it.
How do you fight over it?
Well, in a place like America, I guess people can hide out, so to speak. You don't fly. I mean, United Airlines probably won't let people fly, all that kind of thing. It's a weird time. Back to the very first word I said at the beginning of this conversation, trust. And if anything, people have listened to you and I volley the ball across the net. Some of the things were on the same page and we both kind of tweak each other and try to get to some truth. But obviously, it's a messy situation. 2 smart people, you and I, we don't want to see this messy situation. This should be something where all smart people around the world are unified. And it should not just be only politics. It should not just be only money. But right now, it seems like politics and money are winning.
Politics is making a huge mess of it. I really urge you to read the New England Journal of Medicine study comparing vaccinated people and unvaccinated people. I think it will put you much more at ease.
I will take a look.
Seriously, because it's very convoluted. It's very difficult. People are feeling that their values are being disrespected. When I went into this work of medical decision-making, there are a lot of people who deal with ethics around it, who are bioethicists. And someone said, you're a practical bioethicist. I was like, what? What are you talking about? I have no ethical qualifications or high moral ground whatsoever. The one thing that I really, really stand by, and I know is ethically true and unequivocally ethically true, is that people should make decisions based on information that is valid and that they can understand. Now, what they choose is their own body and is their own life. They understand, if they really do, for example, the perils of obesity, and they do it. What can I say? What can I do? Not much.
My body, my choice.
And that's true. And we should kind of be happy that that is true. But it's my obligation as someone who's involved with medical decision-making to make sure that people have the best, clear, most transparent information in front of them when they make choices. Now, if this is the case and they make what you and I might call the wrong choice, it's lamentable and we need to think what to do. And that, in a way, goes back to the point of mandates, of how do you move things around, because I'm a behavioral scientist, but there's at some point, There's only so much behavior you can do. Richard Thaler wrote about it, the Nobel Prize winner. He wrote about it in the New York Times. He said, there's only so much you can achieve with a nudge. A nudge is a gentle push to action, but it's gentle. It's not a violent shove. Nobody was grabbing you at the line and saying, Mr. Covel, we don't care that you mistrust the new vaccine. We're going to stick it in your arm. They didn't do that. That wouldn't be a nudge.
Are we moving at some point in the near future from the nudge to the pistol to the forehead that says, take the vax? Are we headed that way?
I don't think we will ever get to the pistol to the forehead. Those would be terrible times to live in. But I think the mandate is as close as we can get to there. To telling you, Mr. Covel, we really appreciate your views, but if you want to get on this plane, you have to show me your vaccination approval. And if you don't, I respect that, but you're not going to be able to fly with me.
And Mr. Covel, the vaccinations currently run out every 30 days. So you need 12 vaccinations per year for the rest of your life. Listen, I don't want to keep being a complete crazy person, but that could very well be the case in the not too distant future.
I don't think so. I don't think that the viral load will go down, that the protection will go down quite so quickly. They're talking about something between 5 and 8 months for the protection to go down, and it doesn't disappear. And by the way, I've been taking flu shots every year. I was thinking I could have the flu, and my mom was like, you have got to take the flu shots. So I take them, and I take them every year.
Do you still have the same number of fingers and toes and all that kind of stuff?
Let me count.
Is there anything, though, that I've really missed, that just a kind of a big picture point that you want people to understand? Of course, your book goes into much more than COVID, but I took you into this very topical area. I think it's very important. Is there anything very big picture that we've not discussed that you want to address?
Yeah, I think making medical decisions is difficult, and it's also incredibly important. That's why I call the book Your Life Depends on It. I want people to know that it's hard. I want them to read it in order to understand what their barriers are and why this is hard, not just for them, but for everybody, what they can do. And that's why I'm going on this podcast speaking to this angry and fascinating man.
Is it too angry, really? Does it sound too angry?
No, you know what? It's passionate.
Okay.
You really care. You really care about what you're talking about. That's so much better than phoning it in.
I want to get to the truth. What's the truth? What is the truth?
That's all any of us can aspire for. I want to tell people, please, if you're listening to Michael Covel, then you're the kind of person who cares about their agency, about their ability to control their lives. And if you want to be able to control your life, you should definitely read this book, because you'll have so many aha moments where you'll say, you're not for real.
I believe you.
This is why it didn't work out for me. That's not me. It's not the doctor. But this is what's going on here. It's called Your Life Depends on It. What you can do, you.
I was definitely afraid getting onto this conversation, given that I knew it could be controversial, that I was afraid, where is she going to come from? Is she going to dial it in? Is she going to be representing only corporate interest? Is it going to be talking points? And I give you all the props that you took all my slings and arrows and you dished them back. And it was a nice conversation. And I think anyone listening that would try to pigeonhole you into a slot, some political slot or whatever slot, I think they would have a hard time doing that. So I do recommend people should check out your book. It's called Your Life Depends on It, What You Can Do to Make Better Choices About Your Health. You stood in the firing line. I had all kinds of stuff ready to come at you, and you diffused a lot of it. So good job.
I think we both care about the truth. That's what it boils down to. And that's why I'm undeterred by your passion, because I'm like, he's fighting the good fight. And so am I. And that's all good.
Where can we send people? Where would you like to direct them to? Amazon for the book. It'll be on Amazon, all that kind of fun stuff. What about a website? Is there a place you would like to send people if they want to contact you, reach out to you, find you?
Please. My website is Talya, Talya, Miron, Miron, Shatz, SHATZ.com. That's Talya Miron-Shatz.com. There's a lot more information there. There's a lot of interviews and things I've been saying about COVID and otherwise, and just a lot of good stuff, a lot of good information that I think can be incredibly useful and also fun. And I'm glad that we had a heated yet fun and engaging conversation, because it's something that everyone needs to deal with and so many people walk away from. So please, TalyaMiron-Shatz.com. I would love to hear what you think about everything.
Talya, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Take care.
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.